Next, we'll talk about static properties and static methods. This video will be about static properties, which in some other languages are usually called class attributes or class properties. The general idea is the same in JavaScript, where we can define some sort of property that is not specific to each instance, but instead is tied to the class itself. So these aren't incredibly common in beginner examples of object-oriented programming, but a simple example might be something like a class called cat. We've got our constructor. Every cat has its own, name and breed. And then we can set this.name equals name, this.breed equals breed. So those are specific to each instance, right? These are instance properties. They live on this, which is going to refer to each particular instance of the cat class. If I wanted to store the species or genus or whatever, I don't actually know what the taxonomical definition is here, but something like feline or feline catus, which I think is actually incorrect. I think it's actually supposed to be felis. Anyway, whatever it is, this is not really unique to each instance of the class. The way I've written it up right now, it is every single instance of cat will have its own species set to felis catus. But that doesn't really make sense. I mean, we could do it that way, but it might be easier to use a static property and store it on the cat class itself, because it doesn't change from one instance to the next. So the syntax to do that looks like this. We use the static keyword, and then some sort of variable name like genus species, and then we set it equal to some value. So I'll just do that here. I'll do static species equals felis catus, which I don't actually know if that's correct or not. So this has nothing to do with instances of cats. I can actually just access it directly from the cat class using capital C class. If I try and instantiate a new instance of cat, like new cat, I have a cat that's named Blue, and she's a Scottish fold. I'll call her Blue. The variable will be Blue. If I look at Blue, there's only two properties here that are tied to the instance, breed and name. If I try and access something like blue.species, it doesn't work. Well, it gives me undefined. There's no value. And again, that's because species doesn't live on the instance blue or any other instance. I could have 10,000 cat instances. They'll all have a name and a breed property, but species is tied to the class itself, and I access it using cat.species. So of course, you only put things here as a static property that are not tied to specific instances. Often this will be constants, things that are, common across every instance of your class, like every cat is the same species. Or if you're making a mathematical class, you might put the value of pi or e or other special mathematical constants as a static property. So nowhere near as common as instance properties like we've seen before, which all are based on this, where this refers to the instance of the class, but still important to know about. We use the static keyword, and again, in other languages, these are often called class attributes, and that's basically the idea here. It's something that belongs to the class itself. And if I ever need to access it, I use the name of the class, like cat, and then .species. And again, it could have worked just fine to do it like this, where it is an instance property, but then I'm creating this property for every single cat 10,000 times if I have 10,000 cats. And then if I need to change all of my cats that have already been created and they have a new species, because I realize there's a typo here, I'm going to have to change that 10,000 times, whereas this does not live on the instances, and I would only need to change it in one place. If I decide it's actually now called just felis, I think that's a genus, so maybe the species is just catus. Again, I don't actually know what I'm talking about here, but I can change it. And it only is changed in one place because it only exists in one place, on cat.species.